My sister-in-law took my first baby's life and was still invited to our next pregnancy announcement. She couldn't do anything to me with everyone present, so she waited until my daughter was born and kidnapped her on her own wedding day. Max and I met on a blind date 5 years ago. Honestly, I was super hesitant about such a date, especially because of all the horror stories I had heard. But the second I saw Max, all of those fears went away. He was charming and attentive, and he made me feel like the only girl in the room. He was extremely observant, noticing little things like how my eyes fluttered when I tried to flirt, or how my lips pouted when I liked something. At some point during the date, however, he mentioned jokingly that his family were a little crazy, and I made the mistake of not taking it too seriously, and instead chuckled and said that we're all crazy in our own ways. Fast forward 2 years later, I was walking down the aisle, ready to call myself his wife. Oddly enough, our wedding day was the day the very first problem in our relationship presented itself. I had never met his brother's girlfriend, Rebecca, before this, and so the first time I saw her, I was wearing all white and had my makeup done. This was after Max and I had said our vows, so I was still on my serotonin high and had even drank a little, so I danced my way over to Rebecca and introduced myself. She was wearing a dress that was sort of close to white, but given I'm a non-confrontational person, I wasn't going to say much about it. I went to hug her and say hello, but she actually pushed me away and made a disgusted look. She told me I was embarrassing myself, and that being the center of attention doesn't suit me. I kept on dancing, however, and that's when she told me I was lucky Max had such low standards, because if Max was more like his brother, he would have slapped me for even thinking I had a chance with him. Now, I'm not sure why you would brag about how your boyfriend would hit a woman, but either way, I kept dancing and honestly just ignored her, and I'm positive this was why she did what she did. I don't know if she had some underlying mental issues or something, but she came back a few minutes later with a glass of wine in her hand. She threw it at me and completely ruined my wedding dress. She then randomly blurted out that she knew how badly Max and I wanted kids, and how she hoped I never had any. It was so random. Why did she hate me like this? I wanted to cry, but at the same time, I didn't want to draw attention to myself and ruin my day. And so, I composed myself, went out back, called a friend of mine, had her bring me a regular spare white dress, changed into it, then went back out onto the floor and continued dancing. I wasn't going to let negative Nancy ruin my day. In fact, I was so determined not to let her ruin my day that I didn't even tell anyone what she did. I now know that was the wrong decision. You see, not long after our honeymoon, Max and I decided to start trying for a baby. We had been wanting one for a very long time, and now that we were married, we were ready. I got pregnant a few months later, but then disaster struck. I miscarried after Rebecca accidentally tripped me up, and I fell belly first into the stair railing. I should have been furious, but I truly believed it was an accident. My bump hadn't even started showing, and Max and I hadn't told anyone. Looking back on it, I feel like she somehow knew. She kept asking these cryptic questions and pushing me to drink a beer with them. Either way, it was devastating. And what made it even worse was that after our next doctor's visits, they ran some tests, and it was concluded that it was very unlikely I'd get pregnant again. That day was the first time I ever saw Max cry. We never told anyone what happened, but the next time I saw Rebecca, I remember she was extra smiley and kept dropping these messages and quotes about loss and losing things and how hard it can be. I still don't know how I didn't put the two and two together. She was the one responsible for the death of my baby, and she was so proud of herself for it that she joked and laughed about it to my face, all while I had absolutely no clue. But then a few months later, the universe smiled down on us. I got pregnant again. I still remember how Max and I reacted. He was crying, I was crying, he was on his knees kissing my belly, and before I knew it, he was calling in sick to work so he could take me out to eat. My baby needs food, he said, looking at me, and this baby needs food too. He kneeled down and kissed my belly again. Fast forward a few months, Max and I hadn't told anyone, and we hadn't seen anyone from either of our families either, but we had something planned. With the help of my best friend Amy, we managed to put together a beautiful nursery for our baby daughter. And after reaching the 12-week milestone, which felt like a significant achievement, Max and I decided it was time to share our news with our families. We organized an intimate dinner at our home and invited our loved ones under the pretense of a casual get-together. Nobody suspected what was coming, and we were incredibly excited to witness their reactions. But unfortunately, there was one problem. Rebecca was coming, and what she did is something I'll genuinely never forget. The dinner evening arrived, and our home buzzed with the warmth and chatter of family. Throughout the evening, both Jake and Rebecca behaved like lovesick teenagers. They constantly grabbed at each other, exchanging kisses, and making sounds that were impossible to ignore, especially with everyone present. The situation felt incredibly uncomfortable, and I sensed I wasn't alone in feeling that way. Despite this awkwardness, I was determined not to let it derail our special announcement. As everyone settled in for dinner, Max and I exchanged knowing glances, silently agreeing the time had come. We stood up, and Max cleared his throat to capture everyone's attention. "We have something important to share with all of you," Max announced, his voice brimming with excitement. With that, I revealed the collection of ultrasound images I'd been gathering. As I held them up for everyone to see, I declared with a huge smile, "We're expecting." For a brief moment, silence filled the room as everyone processed what we had just revealed. Then, the room erupted with joy. Everyone jumped from their seats, rushing to embrace us, congratulate us, and share in our happiness. The atmosphere suddenly became electric with excitement and love. Max's parents were especially thrilled. This would be their first grandchild, and I could see the pride and joy shining in their eyes. They knew how hard we'd been trying, and this news meant everything to them. My own mom burst into tears as she hugged me tightly. "Are you feeling okay, honey?" she asked, her voice choked with emotion as tears streamed down her face. I nodded, smiling through my own tears. "Yes, Mom, I'm more than okay." My brother and his wife hugged Max and me, expressing how delighted they were that we were finally becoming parents. They couldn't wait to help out and share their wisdom about first-time parenthood. I admitted how nervous I felt and how I kept overthinking every decision. My brother reassured me that he experienced identical feelings before my niece was born, and his wife nodded in agreement. At that moment, nothing else mattered except the love and support of our family. This was exactly what Max and I had dreamed about. And now, surrounded by our favorite people, everything was falling into place. The evening had been filled with tremendous joy, but there was one person who stuck out noticeably, Rebecca. While everyone else celebrated and shared in our happiness, Rebecca remained motionless in her chair, glaring at us with unmistakable hostility. Her reaction contrasted so starkly with everyone else's that it was impossible to miss. I couldn't help feeling unsettled by it. When Jake came over to congratulate me, I seized the opportunity to quietly ask him what was going on with Rebecca. I wondered if we had somehow offended her, though I couldn't imagine what might have triggered such a reaction. But Jake simply dismissed it, telling me it wasn't important. He seemed completely unconcerned, as if her behavior was something he had grown accustomed to. As the evening progressed, we all moved to the living room for dessert and drinks. Naturally, I abstained from alcohol, and Max joined me in solidarity, choosing not to drink either. We all got comfortable, and the conversation naturally drifted to babies and pregnancy. I shared details about the nursery we were creating, feeling proud of the special space we were designing for Lily. Throughout all of this, Rebecca had remained quiet, barely participating in the conversation. But then, unexpectedly, she suddenly spoke up, asking if she could view our nursery. Her request caught me slightly off guard, but I didn't see any harm in it. After all, she was a parent herself, and I thought perhaps she might offer some helpful advice or suggestions. So I agreed and showed her to the nursery. As we entered the room, I observed her closely, and noticed she didn't appear impressed at all while surveying the space. Instead, she began pointing out perceived flaws with our nursery. She criticized our room choice, claiming it was too bright for a baby to sleep in, suggesting we hadn't properly considered the practicalities. I calmly explained that we planned to install blackout blinds to darken the room whenever the baby needed to sleep, but she barely acknowledged my response. Next, she questioned why we had chosen yellow instead of a more neutral color scheme. I was taken aback and told her yellow is simply a color and has nothing to do with gender anyway. Then, she focused on the baby clothes we had neatly organized in the drawers. She scoffed at them, remarking that her son had never enjoyed wearing such items, and that we should have consulted other parents before purchasing what she called cheap knockoffs. Her tone was dismissive and condescending, which completely surprised me. Until that moment, I'd been trying to remain polite, assuming she might just be somewhat blunt, but this crossed a boundary. I couldn't contain myself anymore. "What the hell are you talking about?" I demanded, unable to hide the frustration in my voice. Her words shocked me, especially considering all the effort Max and I had invested in making everything perfect for our baby. It was obvious she had no intention of offering constructive advice. Instead, it seemed like she was deliberately trying to undermine the joyous atmosphere of the evening. Just as Rebecca was about to respond, my mother and mother-in-law walked into the nursery, their faces lighting up as they admired the room. They began enthusiastically praising how beautiful everything looked, and momentarily, their warmth and compliments filled the space, easing the tension that had been building. However, I wasn't ready to let the issue with Rebecca slide. I turned back to her, repeating my question firmly. "What exactly did you mean by that?" Both my mother and mother-in-law sensed something was wrong. Noticing the tension, my mother asked what was happening. I didn't hesitate to explain how Rebecca had been criticizing the nursery, and had even called our carefully chosen baby clothes cheap. Both women were visibly shocked, clearly surprised that someone would be so openly critical, especially during such a special time. My mother-in-law laughed in disbelief and turned to Rebecca asking, "Is this true?" Rebecca, apparently caught off guard by the sudden confrontation, attempted to downplay her earlier comments. She claimed she found the fabrics too rough and was simply advising me to consider softer options. But neither my mother nor my mother-in-law believed her explanation. They both shook their heads and chuckled softly, pointing out that the clothes felt perfectly smooth to them. Rebecca quickly tried to backtrack, insisting that as a mother, she knew better, and that I should learn to accept criticism with an open mind. Before I could respond, my mother intervened, her voice firm yet calm. "Well, we're mothers too," she stated, "and we would never say anything like that to her. You should know better than anyone how challenging it is being a first-time mother." My mother-in-law joined in, supporting me as well. "This isn't appropriate behavior, Rebecca," she said. "There's a difference between offering advice and being needlessly critical." Rebecca's face flushed with embarrassment as she realized she was outnumbered and clearly in the wrong. She looked visibly offended but had little to say in response. Instead, she stormed out of the nursery in a huff. I followed her out, wanting to ensure the situation didn't escalate further. Rebecca marched straight to Jake, who was still chatting with the rest of the family in the living room. Without explaining much, she announced that she wanted to leave immediately. Jake looked confused, but, sensing her agitation, didn't question her decision. He simply apologized to everyone, congratulated Max and me again on the pregnancy, and then departed with Rebecca. Later on, Jake contacted both Max and me to apologize for Rebecca's behavior at our announcement dinner. He had learned about everything after my mother-in-law gave him a stern lecture for bringing Rebecca to such an important and intimate family gathering. I knew the situation wasn't really Jake's fault, so I forgave him without hesitation. He seemed genuinely concerned and wanted to explain why Rebecca might have behaved so inappropriately. Jake revealed that Rebecca had experienced trauma related to pregnancy in the past. Apparently, Rebecca became pregnant with her son when she was just 16. Later, after marrying her husband, they had hoped to have more children but encountered complications. After years of trying unsuccessfully to conceive again, the emotional strain severely impacted their mental health and eventually contributed to their marriage breakdown. According to Jake, other women's pregnancies remained a sensitive issue for Rebecca, which might explain her negative reaction to our celebration. As a woman, I sympathized with Rebecca's struggles. I could understand the pain and disappointment she must have endured, and I recognized that these experiences had left emotional scars. However, while I empathized with her situation, I couldn't ignore the fact that her comments at our announcement dinner were inappropriate and hurtful. So I decided it would be best to maintain some distance from her at future family gatherings, to protect the positive atmosphere I wanted to preserve around our growing family. Jake Jake and Rebecca continued dating, and on the day I delivered Lily, Jake called and asked Max if he could bring Rebecca to visit our newborn. Although we had reservations, Max and I reluctantly agreed, hoping perhaps things would be different this time. Unfortunately, this proved to be a mistake. As soon as Rebecca saw our baby, she immediately commented on how little hair our newborn had, suggesting this indicated her hair would remain extremely thin as she grew up. Her words felt like a direct attack, and I could see the irritation on Max's face as well. This comment was another unnecessary and insensitive remark during what should have been a purely joyful moment. Jake, sensing the tension in the room, didn't allow Rebecca to stay long. After offering brief congratulations, they quickly departed. This year, Jake shocked everyone by announcing his engagement to Rebecca. The news received mixed reactions, particularly from my mother-in-law. She openly expressed disappointment with Jake's decision to marry Rebecca, having never wanted her to become part of the family. Apparently, my mother-in-law and Rebecca had been clashing for months. Knowing my mother-in-law is typically warm and kind-hearted, I suspected Rebecca's behavior was likely causing their ongoing tension. When Max called Jake to discuss the sudden engagement, believing everything was moving too quickly, Jake confessed that Rebecca was actually 4 months pregnant. Apparently, Jake had only discovered this 2 months earlier and had kept it secret as they feared judgment before getting married. Jake explained that he wanted to marry Rebecca before their baby arrived, which seemed reasonable given their circumstances. However, during the wedding preparations, Rebecca threw a tantrum while trying on wedding gowns because she couldn't fit into any of them. She had gained weight during her pregnancy, making it difficult to wear her dream dress. Jake attempted to convince her to choose something more comfortable, but she refused to compromise. Ultimately, she demanded that Jake change their wedding date. Originally planned to occur before the baby's arrival, it was now postponed until a month after the baby's due date, so Rebecca could lose some pregnancy weight. Despite the frustration this schedule change might have caused, everyone understood that this was Jake and Rebecca's special day, and they deserved to choose a date that made them comfortable. A month ago, Rebecca delivered her daughter, and Max and I had even visited the hospital to congratulate the new parents. For their upcoming wedding, Max was selected as Jake's best man. We weren't comfortable leaving Lily behind for the entire day, so we decided to bring our daughter with us. My mother-in-law and I discussed childcare arrangements and agreed we could manage looking after Lily between us. I initially considered hiring a hotel babysitter, but with increasing concerns about child abductions, I felt safer having a trusted family member watch Lily. During the reception, I planned to avoid drinking and would retire early to our room anyway, ensuring Lily received proper care throughout the event. However, about a week before the wedding, Rebecca called me. During our conversation, she asked if I would be bringing Lily to the wedding. I confirmed our plans and began explaining our childcare arrangements for the evening. To my surprise, Rebecca interrupted me and stated she didn't want Lily at the wedding. Shocked, I asked why. Rebecca explained that she only wanted her miracle baby to be the center of attention, claiming that Lily's presence would divert attention away from her child. I tried reasoning that everyone had already met Lily, and nobody could possibly steal attention from Rebecca on her wedding day, but Rebecca remained adamant and grew increasingly upset. She warned that if I couldn't respect her boundaries, I wouldn't be welcome at the wedding. The situation eventually escalated into a major argument involving Rebecca, Jake, Max, and my mother-in-law. Jake contacted me, apologizing for Rebecca's behavior and clarifying that I was still very much invited to the wedding. He urged me not to take Rebecca's words too seriously and assured me that bringing Lily was absolutely fine. I felt furious with Rebecca and considered skipping their wedding entirely, but I knew supporting Max and attending his brother's wedding was important. So I decided to set aside my feelings and attend, focusing on making the best of the situation for the sake of family harmony. This brings us to the incident that occurred during Jake and Rebecca's ceremony. Several relatives couldn't resist admiring Lily, commenting on how adorable she looked. Rebecca occasionally shot me disapproving glances whenever our eyes met. She clearly still resented me bringing Lily to her wedding, even though her baby unquestionably remained the star attraction, and I made zero effort to seek attention. When the celebration moved to the reception area, my mother-in-law Max and I took turns watching Lily in our hotel room, exactly as planned. Although my mother-in-law became somewhat tipsy as the evening progressed, Max and I remained completely sober, focusing entirely on caring for Lily. Midway through the reception, I noticed my mother-in-law, who was supposed to be with Lily at that moment, frantically searching for me. Something about her demeanor made my heart race, and I rushed over to discover what was wrong. Max, sensing trouble, followed closely behind. My mother-in-law's voice trembled as she whispered that Lily was missing. My heart plummeted. Max demanded clarification, since he had just left our daughter in her care. That's when my mother-in-law admitted that Rebecca had entered the room shortly after he left. They chatted briefly, and at one point, my mother-in-law needed to use the bathroom. But when she returned, both Lily and Rebecca had vanished. Confused and panicked, Max and I immediately located Jake, demanding to know Rebecca's whereabouts and why she would do something so alarming. Jake appeared equally shocked by the situation. Amidst the celebrations and crowds, we alerted hotel staff to search for both Lily and Rebecca. The staff responded immediately, but despite their efforts, neither could be found, even after a full hour of searching. This prompted me to contact the police. Jake attempted to reassure us that involving authorities was unnecessary, insisting Rebecca wouldn't harm Lily, but my fear and anxiety were overwhelming. The thought that Lily was missing with Rebecca, who had already displayed concerning behavior, was unbearable. When police arrived, we provided statements and explained the situation while struggling to maintain composure. Wedding guests began noticing something was wrong, and the atmosphere shifted from celebration to concern. Then, a hotel employee appeared, announcing that Lily and Rebecca had been discovered behind the hotel. We rushed outside with him, my heart pounding with dread. There, we found Rebecca sitting in a chair, holding Lily in one arm while smoking with her other hand. Her own baby rested in a carrier beside her. I couldn't contain my tears as I grabbed Lily from Rebecca and examined her. Max began shouting at Rebecca, demanding to know why she had taken Lily without informing anyone. Rebecca casually responded that she merely wanted to help my mother-in-law, adding that she was family now anyway. My mother-in-law, now completely sober and frantic, screamed at Rebecca, explaining she had absolutely no right to take our daughter without permission, and had deliberately disappeared while my mother-in-law was in the bathroom. Rebecca simply smirked as she turned toward me, remarking that if I was so worried about my daughter, perhaps I should have listened to her request and not brought her to the wedding. I was stunned, realizing she had deliberately abducted my daughter. She wanted me to panic, searching desperately for my child, just to frighten me and teach me a lesson, hoping I would surrender to her demands in the future. Jake tried calming everyone, suggesting this might be a misunderstanding. At this point, the police asked if I still wanted to press charges. Looking at Rebecca's expression, which showed no remorse or apology for her actions, I decided to proceed with kidnapping charges to ensure she never threatened my family again. Rebecca's eyes widened with disbelief as she protested, but police took her into custody immediately. Jake begged me to reconsider, but my mother-in-law told him his wife's actions were unforgivable. I've been criticized for having Rebecca arrested and making her spend her wedding night in jail, but honestly, I don't regret it for a second.